You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, a fatal crash on I-44 claims the life of two people after an elderly man drives the wrong way.
Our day left of rain, and not only that, what if I tell you we've got 40-mile-an-hour winds coming at us as well? We'll have the latest from the Skywatch Weather Center.
Also, in our first exclusive interview in 2 years, Taiwan's president talks about rising tensions with mainland China. All that and more coming up.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. 2 people are dead after an elderly man drove the wrong way on I-44 in Jasper County. The Missouri Highway Patrol says Andrew Wilson, a 91-year-old from Neosho, was driving east in the westbound lanes of the interstate 3 miles east of Fidelity Tuesday night. Patrol says he hit a car driven by 58-year-old Janet Edwards of Sarcoxie head-on. Both drivers died at the scene. A single car crash near Lockwood claimed the life of a 45-year-old Humansville, Missouri man. The crash happened on County Road 32, 7 miles west of Lockwood. Missouri Highway Patrol says Glenn Briggs lost control on a gravel road, hit a fence, and flipped his SUV. Briggs died at the scene. Starting Monday, all public safety communications in Ottawa County will run through a single dispatch center. The Miami, Oklahoma Police Department says if you dial 911 for an emergency anywhere in Ottawa County, the Miami PD will dispatch officers for your jurisdiction. The Police Department says the change will provide a faster response and better service to county residents. We're learning more about a lawsuit filed by the city of Neosho against Newton County. The city filed the suit earlier this month to recover TIF money that Newton County has not paid to the city. The TIF was established in 1999 to help fund improvements within the city. The county made payments to the city until September of 2015. According to documents received by KOAM, the last payment the city received was for just over $24,000.
The county has an obligation under state law to collect, allocate, and pay that money, and it just hasn't done it. And so now the city hopes to recover that money along with the interest that might be due from non-payment of that money over that period of time.
Yesterday, Freeman Health System held its COVID media briefing discussing the neurological side of COVID-19. National Institutes of Health created a database to track neurological symptoms associated with COVID-19. Some of those symptoms include headache, loss of smell, or rarer problems such as stroke or brain disease or brain damage. However, some area medical professionals are noticing another trend. Some people who were initially asymptomatic had COVID without knowing it, are showing long hauler symptoms.
Sometimes the long COVID or the long haulers, it has nothing to do with the severity of COVID-19 acute symptoms they had. So our patients, if you check their antibodies later, they have antibodies, if they were not vaccinated. And then you realize that they did had an infection at some time, and they still have symptoms of chronic fatigue, headaches, mental fog, and they were not sick with COVID.
Dr. Opol says it's important to seek medical attention if you experience any of the neurological symptoms associated with COVID-19. Well, after a blockbuster opening weekend, the Dune story is continuing. Warner Brothers announced Tuesday that Dune Part 2 will hit theaters in 2 years. The new big screen adaptation of Frank Herbert's sci-fi classic opened with $40.1 million, despite a simultaneous streaming debut, giving audiences the option to watch at home. It's the biggest opening for Warner Brothers this year. So far, Dune has made $222 million globally. As for the new film, you can mark your calendar. Dune Part 2 is set to hit theaters October 20th, 2023.
Runtime to be determined.
Did you end up seeing the first one?
Actually, wasn't the second one, the one that's out now, it's longer than the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I still need to go.
And it's not close, by 20 minutes it's longer. I mean, it's significantly longer.
Impressive.
And honestly, I like if I see it on TBS, I stop. That and Beastmaster, we need to make that a poll one time. There's too many choices. Movies that are pretty bad, but whenever you see them, you refuse to flip past them. I've got a laundry list. All right, let's get to it. We've got distinct bands of we've got widespread rain everywhere, distinct bands of very heavy rain. We'll go from west to east. We'll start here in Montgomery County, crossing over through South Coffeyville into Wada County. Then we've got Labette with the orange and the red. This has been our most extensive one all morning long. The one that runs from Ottawa County, just about into Miami, up to Baxter, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Frontenac, skates over to Girard. And then this thing actually connects, makes its way across the state line, just about through CJ right now, and dropping down toward Joplin. So 43 is going to be a problematic area. 169, 69, 43. We've yet to have really any problems on 49 as of yet. And also to 44 down by the Miami exit. Those are the places that if you're driving, you need to watch for hydroplaning. I've already got several reports of that this morning. Flood watch still in effect for the Little Osage, and don't forget wind advisories for just about the entire 4 states. That's actually a high wind warning you see in those mustard color yellows out to Wichita and to the west, but we're still going to get 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts. So it's not only going to whip the rain around, but it's also going to make it a cold, cold rain if you're caught outside in it. And the counterclockwise motion is now in effect. It actually started last night. So it just keeps on spinning in from the north and really doesn't want to depart out to the east. You know, there's a chance, we were talking about Wichita a second ago, there's a chance Wichita ends up with sunshine today. I mean, we're not that far removed. We've got another 1.5 inches, 2.5 inches of rain to go before we're done Friday morning.
I'm just glad we're going to get a break this weekend.
Yeah, weekend will be fine.
We'll need it. Up next, research shows significant disparities for Black women in breast cancer detection and treatment. And later, babies in the NIC unit show off their Halloween finest for the cameras. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14.
When it comes
CDC is out with new education campaigns meant to prevent drug overdose deaths. The 4 campaigns are aimed at young adults ages 18 to 34. Among other things, the campaign will provide information about the prevalence and dangers of fentanyl and the risk of mixing drugs. In its press release, the CDC emphasized the importance of telling people that fentanyl can be hidden in drugs without the user's knowledge. Another goal is to express the importance of reducing stigma around drug use to support treatment and recovery. There's also important information about the medication naloxone. It's often administered as a nasal spray and can reverse opioid overdoses. Anyone can carry naloxone and give it to a person who is having an overdose. Well, people with hearing loss may soon be able to buy hearing aids without visiting a doctor. The Food and Drug Administration proposed a new rule Tuesday that would allow purchasing the devices without a prescription, an exam, or a fitting. It comes after an executive order from President Joe Biden called for increased competition and access to medical devices. The FDA says out of the 15% of adult Americans who have hearing loss, just 20% use an aid. The proposed rule also aims to make hearing aids more affordable by making them available at more retailers and online. Public can comment on the proposition for 90 days. October, as you know, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and there are disparities in treatment and survival of breast cancer for Black women. Reporter Michael George has more on what could help bridge this gap.
Darlene Bassett Waters gets annual mammograms, and the 53-year-old has a message for other women after having 2 breast cancers identified early.
Don't put it off. If I would have put it off, where would I be?
Research shows significant disparities for Black women in breast cancer detection and treatment. While Black and white women get breast cancer at about the same rates, Black women are 40% more likely to die from the disease and are also more likely to be diagnosed before age 40 when annual screenings typically start.
So we're dealing with the fact that Black women are more likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer that would not have been caught early by screening mammography. It's more likely to have been caught after they develop a symptom or a mass, which means it's typically later stage.
Dr. Lola Fayanju is a breast surgeon at Penn Medicine. She says with the risks for Black women, especially younger Black women, she encourages them to have a breast cancer risk assessment with their doctor at age 30 and also do self-breast exams.
So those are the real messages I'd want to convey to my fellow Black women, is that know your body, know your family history, take ownership of your health, and really definitely begin screening at 40, if not sooner, if you're found to have a family history that makes you at risk for a higher risk for breast cancer.
It's something Darlene wants her daughters to know.
My story to them was, this is the reason why we need to take care of our bodies.
Because she knows firsthand the importance of early detection and treatment. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
Black women are also more likely to develop a specific type of aggressive breast cancer called triple-negative breast cancer, which has a poor prognosis because there is a lack of effective treatments for the disease. Well, maybe you're a soccer fan, maybe not, but you've got to appreciate what you're about to see. In the 55th minute of the Portland Timbers 2-0 win over the San Jose Earthquakes yesterday, Dariana Sprilla pounced on a mishandled ball from the Earthquakes keeper, poked it in the air away from the goal and over a defender in order to pass it to himself before launching his body in the air, striking the ball and then sending it, look at that hit, sending it the opposite direction on a blind bicycle kick that sailed over the retreating keeper and bounced into the back of the net.
Pretty cool.
Impressive.
I like the victory lap. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's how you celebrate. I like that.
There we go again. Woo!
I wish you had some talcum powder and would have pulled the LeBron. That would have been cool. Check out this rain coming down sideways at 7th and Range Line in Joplin. Pick up the raindrops illuminated by the streetlights right there. Not only torrential, but like I said, that wind just about taking it from one direction to the other. A Skywatch storm tracker with distinct bands of very, very heavy rain rolling through and everything moving from north to south. So what we see in Joplin right there, we've got heavier rain that's going to follow that with that central band that's turning orange and even red around the Pittsburgh area. Out to the west in between Independence, South Coffeyville, and also too, remember, it's already intruded into portions of Ottawa County. Rain total since this whole thing began, we're getting past the 3-inch marks now when we see the yellow. Everybody else pretty much in between 1.5 to 2, just that little triangle right there, the Chanute-Pittsburgh-Fort Scott triangle. That has been spared a little bit, but it's going to happen all day long. Flood watch in effect for the little Osage. Wind advisory for just about everybody else. Temperatures stuck in the low 50s all day long, and the rain will not let up until Friday morning. Does look like a nice Halloween. Just got to stay above the water until then. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
In her first international TV interview in close to 2 years, Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen says rising tensions between Beijing and Taipei bring the most challenging time for people of Taiwan. And this comes as Beijing steps up its military pressure over the democratic island just off of China's southeastern coast. Will Ripley has that interview.
Is Taiwan more safe today than it was when you became president in 2016?
If it's a threat from China, it's increasing every day.
Are you interested in speaking with President Xi? Would you like to have more communication with him?
Well, more communication would be helpful so that we would reduce misunderstanding, given our differences in terms of our political systems. We can sit down and talk about our differences and try to make arrangements so that we would be able to coexist peacefully.
Your predecessor, as you know, did meet with President Xi. Why do you think that the communication has really gone south since 2016?
Well, I think the situation has changed a lot, and China's plan towards the region is very different.
Does that support include sending some U.S. service members to help train Taiwanese troops?
Well, yes. We have a wide range of cooperation with the U.S. Aiming at increasing our defense capability.
How many U.S. service members are deployed in Taiwan right now?
Not as many as people thought. People have different interpretation of what President Biden has said.
Do you have faith that the United States would defend Taiwan if the mainland were to try to move on Taiwan?
I do have faith, and given the long-term relationship that we have with the U.S. and also the support of the people of the U.S. as well as the Congress and the administration has been very helpful. We have to expedite our military reform so that we have the ability to defend ourselves. And given the size of Taiwan compared to the size of the PRC, developing asymmetric capability is the key for us.
How prepared is Taiwan today?
We are trying to make us stronger in every aspect, and it includes our military capability and our international support.
You talked about how really the situation is so complex now.
Yeah, it is very complex. This is probably the most challenging time for people of Taiwan.
You read the outside headlines, the most dangerous place on earth.
We read these reports as a reminder to us as to what are the threats that we're under, and we have to get ourselves better prepared. But we're not panicked, we're not anxious because we have gone through so many difficulties in the past.
We'll be right back with our four-state hero after this. It's time to honor today's four-state hero. Private First Class Leroy Kissy, who served in the United States Army from 1941 to 1945. He fought in the Pacific Theater of World War II. His hometown, Pittsburgh, Kansas. We're proud to salute Private First Class Leroy Kissy, today's four-state hero. A Pennsylvania woman is being called a hero after she saved her neighbor from a house fire. Here are the details.
I noticed that there was smoke coming out of his windows and his door.
Katrina Aviles also noticed her elderly neighbor still inside.
All the neighbors, we all love him.
He was struggling to get out, so she ran to help.
And I put his arms around my neck and I carried him onto my back and I told him we have to go.
He grabbed hold, but then asked Katrina to go back.
So I ran back into his house. He has oxygen tanks in there and I heard them starting to pop. So I ran back out of the house. I told him I can't get your oxygen.
Katrina feared the fire would get worse.
I was terrified. I wasn't going to be able to carry him the whole way.
East Lampeter Township Police got there in minutes and helped take him to safety. They also helped firefighters get a jump on the flames.
In the volunteer world, sometimes we're a little understaffed, a little light, but we made it happen.
Firefighters think that an electrical malfunction in the homeowner's oxygen machine may have actually started the fire.
It was tough to watch, especially with him beside me.
But Katrina is grateful her neighbor should be okay and is hoping he'll be back home soon.
Well, parents of babies in the neonatal intensive care unit at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri are getting a special treat this week. Kelly Eckerman shows us how 5 photographers whose own children each spent time in the NICU are helping to spread joy this Halloween week.
Take that one out. Grab the other one too.
Meet Lena Ray Bennett. She was just 2 pounds at birth. She's been in the NICU at St. Luke's Hospital since July.
It's hard seeing all the tubes and the alarms and everything. So you just got to take the one day at a time and find those little moments.
Her costume, I love it.
Today is one of those moments. The hospital's teaming up with the March of Dimes, providing special Halloween costumes and volunteer photographers to create a memory for these families. Lena Ray is a mermaid.
I was excited because even though, she's still here and hooked up to monitors, she still gets to be cute and adorable.
Next door, we find a precious little jack-o'-lantern.
What's up?
And then a tiny Chiefs player. For photographer Helen Ransom, it's a labor of love. She once spent a lot of time in the NICU with her own children, triplets. She loves bringing a little normalcy to these families.
If your baby is in the NICU, you're delaying how long it can be before you can take them to a photographer. And so I can come in here and I can gift them that experience in a really hard, unnormal time.
And capturing these adorable creatures does bring joy.
I like to reassure parents, hey, I've done this, and you're gonna come out the other side and your baby is too.
Well, the photographers plan to do it all over again at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Another half hour of news and weather is just ahead. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Authorities talked to our own Bronte Sorotsky about a rise in arson in the city of Joplin. And a jury has been selected in the trial against organizers of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We'll be right back.
4 States' most watched news starts now.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:30. Let's take a look at today's top stories. 2 people are dead after an elderly man drove the wrong way on I-44 in Jasper County. The Missouri Highway Patrol says Andrew Wilson, a 91-year-old from Neosho, was driving east in the westbound lanes of the interstate 3 miles east of Fidelity Tuesday night. The patrol says he hit a car driven by 58-year-old Janet Edwards of Sarcoxy head-on. Both drivers died at the scene. A single car crash near Lockwood claimed the life of a 45-year-old Humansville, Missouri man. The crash happened on County Road 32, 7 miles west of Lockwood. Missouri Highway Patrol says Glenn Briggs lost control on a gravel road, hit a fence, and flipped his SUV. Briggs died at the scene. Starting Monday, all public safety communications in Ottawa County will run through a single dispatch center. The Miami-Oklahoma Police Department says if you dial 911 for an emergency anywhere in Ottawa County, the Miami PD will dispatch officers for your jurisdiction. The Police Department says the change will provide a faster response and better service to county residents. The city of Joplin has been seeing an increased number of suspected arsons since July. KOAM's Bronte Sorotsky spoke with Captain William Davis on recent arson reports, as well as a Joplin store owner affected by one of the fires.
The city of Joplin is experiencing an increased number of suspected arsons in the area. All are either arson in the first or second degree. When contacting the Joplin Police Department to understand what they're seeing when it comes to these crimes, Captain Davis says he was unable to do an interview on the topic, but was able to give us details on 7 out of the 22 incidents. So far, one he has given us details on has resulted in an arrest. Christopher L. Smith of Joplin has been charged with arson in the first degree, as well as 6 counts of child endangerment after using a butane lighter to set the window frame of a residence on fire. According to Davis, Smith was suicidal, and police responded to that call a day before his arrest. Davis tells us Smith got into an argument with his girlfriend, then tried to self-harm and left the residence. He then came back early in the morning and tried to get in before setting a fire. A separate fire at 4th and Grand hasn't resulted in any arrests, but did concern the store owner of B&B Discount.
Went to shut the door and I had 15-foot flames coming out of my dumpster out in the alleyway. Wasn't nobody around except for one guy down on the opposite end of the alley.
The fire came from a dumpster behind the store, and according to JPD, that case is closed and no arrests have been made. According to Davis, some other area fires included 2 at 12th and Byers, as well as a shed on Empire Street. But the store owner says the fires worry him to be in Joplin.
There's a lot of arson stuff going around. That makes me worry about my family members and my friends.
In Joplin, Bronte Sorotsky, KOAM News.
Joplin Police Department also tells us there are other fires the fire department also responded to, but we were unable to speak with them. Jasper County Health Department reports 4 more COVID-19 deaths. Patients were 2 men in their 50s and 60s and 2 women, both in their 80s. The latest deaths bring the county's total to 235. Yesterday, Freeman Health System held its COVID media briefing discussing the neurological side of COVID-19. The National Institutes of Health created a database to track neurological symptoms associated with COVID-19. Some of those symptoms include headache, loss of smell, or rarer problems such as stroke or brain disease or brain damage. However, some area medical professionals are noticing another trend. Some people who were initially asymptomatic had COVID without knowing it and are showing long hauler symptoms.
Sometimes the long COVID or the long haulers, it has nothing to do with the severity of COVID-19 acute symptoms they had. So our patients, if you check their antibodies later, they have antibodies, if they were not vaccinated. And then you realize that they did had an infection at some time, and they still have symptoms of chronic fatigue, headaches, mental fog, and they were not sick with COVID.
Dr. Opol says it's important to seek medical attention if you experience any of the neurological symptoms associated with COVID-19. Pittsburgh Community Theater is sinking its teeth into a new production. Last night, we got a little taste. The theater is performing Bram Stoker's Dracula. We got a chance to check out the production last night before its official debut. The show is a perfect date night opportunity. But don't bring the kids. The community theater says it'll have lots of frights.
It was a surprise, and I wasn't expecting to be like the bad guy, but it feels kind of good. I get to be angry, I get to yell, I get to run around. I like putting lots of energy into my roles, and Dracula definitely gets to bring the heat.
The show will run at 7 on Friday, 2 p.m., and 7 on Saturday, and at 2 p.m. on Halloween. That'd be a fun thing to check out on Halloween, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely great. I've never seen a bad show. Never.
All
right, rain coming down sideways over 7th and Range Line. It is a wet one, and instead of me just telling you this, I had to be responsible and actually walk outside. And it's cold, it is windy. If you have not been outside yet, bundle up, because that wind's making a huge difference, and that rain is super cold. Here's the biggest band that we've got, stretching really all the way from just about Fort Scott, so that's going to be in Bourbon County, making its way right down the Missouri state line through Crawford and Cherokee County, and now has not only made its way through Ottawa, but then crosses over the state line into McDonald County as well. And there we are, right over Joplin. Anywhere you're going to have to go, whether it be 171, 69, 43, you're going to run into the very heavy rain right there. 44, especially, say from Joplin down to the Miami exit, is going to be problematic. Let's run out here to Coffeyville, where we see it coming down. This thing stretches from Montgomery County down to the south into Newata County. Now, here's the thing. We haven't picked up any lightning with this. Technically, this is a heavy rain. We don't even show up on the severe thunderstorm risk map, so we'll consider ourselves lucky with that. But we've still got a long way to go, and then as we start to see the yellow begin to creep up, at 2.5 inches, that's in Pittsburgh alone. We're looking down to the south where we're approaching the 3-inch mark. We're easily going to cruise over 3 inches here and say the next hour or so. Flood watch, just one in effect. That's for the Little Osage River in Vernon County. They've got some heavy rain right now. Now we've got wind advisories. My goodness. We're talking about 30 to 40 mile-an-hour gusts. It's been sustained double digits consistently in Independence and now Chanute, up to 20 miles per hour as well. Over 7th and Range Line, it's 15 miles per hour. And don't worry about temperatures, because they're not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get too cold, and we're not going to have any type of a warm-up either. Now, what we've seen is this system recede to the south, right down here. It was all along the Gulf yesterday as well. But now we've got our counterclockwise motion that we were talking about yesterday. It is upon us. And you can see the big swirl just about happened just to the east of us. And so it kicks everything back up to the north and proceeds to come down on us for the rest of Thursday all the way into Friday morning. And you notice if you get out to Wichita, they're probably going to get sunshine and dry weather today. We're not that far removed from them, but not for us, as it just will persist all the way till Friday morning. After that, we can at least look forward to a good Halloween weekend. Sunny skies for the kids on Saturday and Sunday. Overnight lows, well, really I want to say about, sunset if they wanted to go trick-or-treating at night. Mid-50s to upper 40s on Sunday. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. This morning on the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our morning Instapoll, talking about collecting things, because there's a gentleman we had a story on by the name of John Hotchkiss. He started collecting tiny model cars after cancer left him unable to work. Ended up with 6,000 of those Hot Wheels and said it was the reason that gave him the driving force to wake up every morning to see what was going to be in the mail and what new cars and details he could pick out. And so our question to you is, what do you collect? If you collect anything. 77% of you went with the other. We gave you a couple votes right there. 15% of you say figurines, thanks to our own Will York, our wonderful graphic artist. The KOAM Weather Department, we collect figurines and baseball cards together as one. This is Dave Justice, former Atlanta Brave, World Series champion. And of course, you can catch the Braves and Astros coming back on Game 3 tomorrow night right here on Fox 14. Time now to talk about a little jury selection in Charlottesville, because it's a trial that once again is going to focus the nation's attention on the 2017 Unite the Right rally. Jury is going to decide whether the organizers should be held accountable for the violence that turned deadly. Here's Jeff Pegues with the story.
Today in court, the jurors were sworn in as some of the defendants, self-proclaimed neo-Nazis and white nationalists, looked on. During the Unite the Right rally in 2017, Jews will not replace us! White nationalists marched through the streets. They carried torches and clashed with counter-protesters, until a car driven by neo-Nazi James Fields plowed into a crowd, killing Heather Heyer.
The goal of this lawsuit, first and foremost, is justice for our plaintiffs and accountability for those responsible for the violence 4 years ago.
Amy Spitalnik is the executive director of Integrity First for America, which brought the lawsuit on behalf of some of the victims of the violence.
The facts are clear. This was a conspiracy motivated by racism.
The plaintiffs believe that they will prove their case by highlighting social media chats and text messages.
I think ultimately Charlottesville was good for our movement. But
among the defendants, Richard Spencer, who was one of the rally organizers, will claim that there was no conspiracy and they had a First Amendment right to protest. But messages between Spencer and rally organizer and defendant Jason Kessler reveal this exchange. "We're raising an army, my liege, for free speech, but the cracking of skulls if it comes to it." The violence that day haunts Liz Sines.
I heard screams. I heard this awful sound.
One of the plaintiffs who narrowly escaped injury when the car hit Heather Heyer.
I don't think I will ever not be scared.
Plaintiffs in the case say they're going to try to prove the statute called the Ku Klux Klan Act. It was put on the books in the late 1800s to combat attacks against African Americans. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Another supply chain bottleneck is affecting local beer and winemakers. This shortage can affect your wallet and your tailgate party, and it may go further than that. Breweries and wineries in the La Crosse, Wisconsin area are feeling the supply shortages of glass bottles and aluminum cans, which are raising prices and stifling production.
From vineyard to table, El Maro Vineyard in Trempealeau takes pride in its acres of grapes.
The romance of it is fun. Seeing the people, I enjoy seeing people, the guests, the people that play musical instruments here. It's fun. That part's fun.
But a bottle shortage is upsetting the flow.
Every day can be a challenge, which is normal for this business. It's not unusual for it to be a challenge. It's just adding more weight.
Competition for its main supplier in Mexico and shipping backups have raised bottle prices and made it tougher for small wineries like El Maro to keep up.
Every winery in the world is feeling the shortage. I don't believe it's just us. We feel it rather hard because we're a small winery in the full wineries picture.
And glass bottles aren't the only thing coming up short. At Pearl Street Brewery in La Crosse, they're short on cans.
Last year we got a canning line in 2020, and that was right about the time the aluminum shortage happened.
That shortage made founder Joe Kachiver's supplier unable to fulfill its canning contract.
Cans we are able to source are all, very high quality, just as good, but they're coming from overseas as opposed to domestic cans. So it's really hard to find American-made cans, which we would prefer to use.
Raising prices and pressure on suppliers along the chain as the shortage goes on.
The real issue here is the unknowns, not knowing what, the future looks like.
Emily Haugen, News 8 Now.
Well, as the shortage pushes on, one solution Pearl Street Brewery devised was to share can shipments with other local breweries. Both of these shortages are industry-wide and are affecting businesses across the country. We'll be right back with more after this, but first, let's take a look at the market prices before the opening bell.
Little disclaimer before we do this next story, because for many of you it's going to hit very, very close to home, and I want you to know that the scene where this movie takes place is a small town in Oklahoma, but it's hit by a devastating tornado. And once again, this is a preview of a new movie hitting theaters this weekend. Completely understand if you want to go grab some coffee or something of that nature here for next couple minutes. David Daniel with a look at the movie, what's called 13 Minutes.
I'm getting increasingly concerned about this developing supercell southwest of the metro.
13 minutes is the average time people have to find shelter from a tornado. But as with anything, different people respond in different ways.
Everybody out! Tornado! Follow me this way. Everybody hurry!
Are you sure this is the safest place to be?
Writer-director Lindsay Gosling worked with storm chaser Travis Farncombe, seeking realism in both the storm and people's reactions.
We wanted it to be authentic to the place, the people, and also to the weather patterns of the day.
We're under a particularly dangerous situation, Tornado Watch.
Don't worry about this, we're gonna get through it. We always do get through it, and we're gonna get through it again.
We have really great science, but then there's the social science aspect. There's the people aspect.
People simply not listening when they're told what to do, or they get confused about mixed messaging, or don't understand because of language barriers.
Peter Fasinelli was impressed by the film's realism. No flying cows here.
This is the way more grounded version of that film. Like you're in it, you're in the thick of it. You feel like you're there with these people and having to make life and death decisions with them.
Anne Heche saw parallels with how people react to other crises, including the pandemic.
We are here to help each other as a community, and if there's one thing that it could build, we just had more of that understanding. I think this movie reflects that.
Do you have any information on a specific location?
It's us.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
All right, theaters Friday, digital, VOD, November 19th. And so the question would be, when we get this much amount of rain, we certainly have our own threats. So we've got flood watches, and we're in the middle of a high wind advisory right now. How come we don't show up on the severe thunderstorm risk map? It's a great question. Number one, the rain that we've had, we haven't had any thunder or lightning with it. And then the National Weather Service breaks it down into categories, 3 categorical definitions of what to look for in severe weather. Those are going to be tornado, wind, and hail. Ours is considered non-thunderstorm wind, and that's why we are not part of the severe thunderstorm risk map for today on into tomorrow. With that being said, we've all been through this before. We know areas of the 4 states that flood, and sometimes they flood like that. Let's jump to the live look outside of Television City. That's about the extent of it right there. Heavy rain, overcast skies, and high winds. Been tracking this one band right through the middle of the 4 states as it works from north all the way down to south, just about to make its way into Delaware County and McDonald County, as far as northeast Oklahoma and southwest Missouri, respectively. This thing has not given up on a line from, say, Columbus and Crestline all the way up to Pittsburgh, just right along Highway 69. And then as we filter into southwest Missouri, we've got some pockets of good rain approaching I-49 at the Carthage exit, and then riding 44 from Joplin down to the Miami exit. Also, Highway 43 in southwest Missouri has been problematic. More of the rain variety, albeit sometimes hard throughout southeast Kansas, with this one dropping into Nowata County. Watch out for hydroplaning though, specifically along highways 400 and 169 in southeast Kansas. And there are a look at our accumulation numbers since this whole thing started, already in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 3 inches for most of us. Well, this is not going to let up until Friday morning, so even though you may be on your way to work and say, oh, the roads aren't too bad now, be very wary of them on the way home as well. Stay tuned for a nice weekend though. 62 on Saturday and Sunday. Twilight, sunset for the kids if they want to go trick-or-treating after dark. High 40s, low 50s. We'll be back. Wrap up this edition of the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.